welcome back to my channel. This is Tita Lavinia of Tita's of Pageantry, and for this episode, I'm going to be bringing you part 2 of my special coverage of Miss Universe Philippines 2022. But this time around, I will be giving you a review of the whole show. So please make sure you stick around, please subscribe to the channel, as well as hit that bell notification button for your weekly pageant fix. Hey guys, I know a lot of you are excited for this episode, but this is part 2, and if I'm being very honest with you, right after the final show, I did a live sesh with you, but I couldn't really sleep because we had to wake up a little early the next day to head back home. We were housed at the hotel near the area, and I was thinking of ways to present this review for you. I was thinking of going for the usual, like the good, the bad, and the ugly, but the bad and the ugly parts were just pretty small, I'd say pretty insignificant, that I didn't want to give it a separate segment because I felt that overall the show was really good. But here at Titas of Pageantry and here at this channel, of course, we're not gonna just say really good. We're gonna make himay. We're gonna really get into the details. And for me to do this, I had to allot a bit of time for myself to rest and to catch the show as it was telecast on TV. And the good thing was that all the materials are readily available. So I was able to compare my experience watching it live and how it was presented when you guys got to watch it on TV or on your small screens from your cell phone. And, you know, very early on, I think that we're all on the same page. This show was a definite improvement. So let me go ahead and start first with the production. Initially, they decided on having a red carpet event at 5 in the afternoon. But because we're Filipinos and because I'm a Filipino who's running late, I knew that they weren't going to really start on the dot. So at around that time, we were having dinner elsewhere because I knew that, yeah, we had a little bit of time to grab dinner and then, you know, make chica a little bit, because the show that was initially going to start at 7 in the evening did not, of course, start at 7 in the evening. We didn't arrive at the venue up until around almost 8, and at that time they just started with the production number. Bamboo was the one who opened the show, and I thought that it was a really good idea to have a rock star open the show. Now, regarding the opening of the show, the ladies took the ramp in a Victoria's Secret like fashion show, but this time they did not wear embellished leotards, which I was really happy about because I was really concerned that they, you know, it might look like a poor version of Victoria's Secret. But they sort of did their own mix, and they had the ladies wear sparkly ensembles. Some of them were in shorts, others were in cords, others wore skirts. So I liked that it was a little modest, that it wasn't a full-blown, you know, Victoria's Secret 2.0. And it was really nice that, yeah, Bamboo opened the show because I grew up in the 90s. I mean, this was my vibe. Bamboo is an artist that I look up to. He's an artist that, you know, I listen to. So it was really a delight for a 90s girl like me to watch him really perform and perform really well. Now, let me give you my first impression of the venue as well as the stage. The stage itself, I thought it was fantastic. I know a lot of people are still 50-50 with the setup because it seemed simple, and it is simple. It was basically just a stage with really tall LED lights and a T-shaped stage that had a long runway. Although I did wish that the runway could have extended a little further. I just felt that it was just a bit clipped for me. But if you look at it from an audience perspective, from where I was sitting, it just seemed like a really long walk. But yeah, I just wanted a little bit more. But, you know, that's really very insignificant because the simplicity of the set design, I think, really worked because they got to focus on the impressive images that was being projected from the LED wall. So I like the idea that it dwarfed the ladies and it made the venue even bigger. So yeah, I thought that it was a really good idea not to include like too many elements on the stage so that the audience could just focus on the ladies and that long runway and then whatever images will be projected from the LED screen. So yeah, as for the venue, let me just be very honest with this because around the last few days before the coronation, Miss Universe Philippines organization lowered the ticket prices to 50% for at least the lower box up until general admission, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're there, the lower floors were pretty occupied, yes. So we were pretty full down there. But if you look at the floors a little bit above, you could see patches of empty seats. So I thought that it was a really good idea not to focus the camera too much towards the crowd and to dim the light so that you couldn't really see the patches of empty seats. So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that it wasn't packed. But yeah, the bottom part, or at least the floor where we were at, I think that they sold out the seats. But yeah, it wasn't really as packed as how we would imagine it, let's say at Binibining Pilipinas. I love the lighting. When I tried to compare this one to how it was presented on TV, I think that they did a commendable job, because one of the criticisms and the critiques that we've been saying all this time is that it's been so dark, especially if you compare the production to prelims. So at least there were so many elements of the show that improved. Lighting definitely improved. Another improvement was with the camera angles, so at least we're no longer dizzy from trying to catch everything and trying to keep up with the camera angles that seemed like it was installed at an octopus carnival ride. So I think that this time they had a calmer cameraman doing all of the camera work. So these guys, it still needed some improvements. But when I read through the comment section of the foreign pages, they were all saying that it seemed like they were watching an edition of Miss Universe. And I agree with this, because even though it wasn't quite as perfect, it doesn't matter, because I absolutely felt like I was watching the 2020 edition in Florida, because it had the same feels. I mean, I don't think that there's anything to really nitpick in terms of production. I think that they did a really commendable job in presenting us with something that they have probably been planning all this time, because they weren't able to execute this on the first edition. They weren't able to execute this on the second edition. So if they did a lot of planning and if they did a lot of magic to make this happen for the third edition, then I think they did a really good job in doing that. And I myself, as one of their critiques, one of their most vocal critiques, I was really satisfied with what I saw. I think that was okay. And no, not okay, more than okay, I just actually wish that they practice more on the dancing and the blocking, because you probably won't get to notice it, but if you try to check out closer videos, some of the ladies had their own dance steps and some of the ladies had their own timing thing going on. So I just wish that everybody would be in sync this time. Let's talk about the hosts, because they had the most impressively eye candy host this year. Beautiful, beautiful women. They had several outfit changes. Pia definitely dominated. I will give you a blow-by-blow account of everything that they wore. I will be giving you a separate episode for this, but yeah, just really very early on, it was an impressive group of women who were on stage, and I just found delight in watching them change and watching them change their hairstyle as well as their clothes. And I thought that they had really good rapport with each other. Pia, Demi, and Iris, beautiful, beautiful people. And if you were 50-50 with the way Demi would host a show, then now is a great time to really recognize her efforts. It seems that Demi just needed really good material, to get into that groove. And it was really lovely for them to, come together and give us a spectacle. It just seemed like they were in competition as well. They were some of the most amazing Filipino designs, although I know Demi brought in international designers for her dresses for the night, but it didn't matter because they added bling to the already glittering event. So yeah, kudos to bringing all of these ladies together, and not to mention the crowd. There were so many other beauty queens and other candidates and former title holders who were in the crowd. So yeah, it was an absolutely glittering effect. So there were video inserts, yes. I will say that it was necessary, of course, to have these video inserts, but I like the fact that it wasn't really, there weren't a lot of it. Let's talk about the performers, because there were a number of performers at this show. And I know that when we talk about performers, especially from the fan side, from the admin side, we always groan whenever we would encounter someone. We would always say, the who, the who. I honestly didn't mind that I did not know some of the performers, and maybe because I've been hiding under the rock, or maybe because I haven't really been really interested. But for nostalgia, they brought in some of the performers who sang some of the iconic songs from the previous editions. And then, of course, they brought in Morissette, they brought in Bamboo, they brought in this guy from American Idol. I honestly did not mind the performances. And I know this is me speaking, and I'm usually very critical about this. I did not mind it because, number one, the songs seemed really catchy. Number two, a lot of these songs are actually quite familiar to me. So I can strum along a little bit. But number three, I think that the performances gave people like me, someone who watches the show but then updates folks real time on socials. I think that this gave me a little bit of time to work on my socials while trying to catch up with what was happening on the show. And I couldn't help it, you guys. I know that I was there to watch the show and enjoy the show, but I couldn't help not turning on the media person mode and just trying to get more footage and, just trying to update everyone, because I felt that they didn't turn on the jammers at the venue. So I was pleasantly surprised that I had internet connection, that it was easy for me to update real time. And it was a lot easier because Tita B was at home. She was Team Bahay, and she was also updating the folks at the Tita sa Pageantry page with, more HD photos. Let's move on to the cuts. So I remember there was a live session I had some weeks ago, and I remember reading a comment saying that I wish that the cut wouldn't be so severe, because in the past they would do top 16 and then they would do top 5. So there would be a lot of wasted efforts in between. But I like that this time they cut the top 16 and then they moved on to top 10 before they cut the top 5. I think that this is a better arrangement because it gives a lot more chances for the girls to really advance. So they move on to top 16, and the ladies who were called at top 16 were Nueva Vizcaya. I know she was surprised because not a lot of people talk about her, but she was actually a recipient at one of the special awards the previous day. So Miss Nueva Vizcaya definitely made it. Taguig, Katrina Ligado. My personal favorite, Cebu City, Chantal Schmidt made it. Aklan's Jonah Sweet, which was a really good thing for her because she definitely rose to the top within the last few days prior to the competition. Makati was no surprise. Albay was no surprise as well as Palawan. Iloilo Province definitely made it. Baguio made it. Cebu Province, of course. Misamis Oriental was also one of the candidates who really took off at least a few weeks before the competition. Bohol, no surprise there. Ilocos Sur was a surprise, but in a way, I'm also not surprised. Height is really striking, but I know that the personality is something. Maybe we don't really get to see it, but I had the opportunity to interact with her at the Kumu campaign for Ayin Bernos. And yeah, I thought that she had tons of personality. We also had Laguna. I was surprised, but maybe not so much because, she has been performing as well. And of course, we had the eventual winner, Pasay. And of course, Iloilo City, which I was really happy about being an Ilongga. So I think that when the dust settled right after top 16, we started figuring out who did not make it. And it was just unfortunate that one of the favorites from the anti-trifecta group, Ivy Lou Bourbon of Pangasinan, did not make it. And I observed her up until the end of the show, like when she donned on her evening gown, and, she still looked fantastic, even if she doesn't have a lot of exposure. And I was just thinking, what could be the reason why Pangasinan did not make it? Because if we are dealing with a set of judges with fresh eyes, I mean, she should be someone striking that would really stand out. So I'm thinking maybe that little stint that happened during that Jewelmer fashion gala, maybe that did not help her. I don't know. I'm just assuming, because if we're just going to look at, the physicality of these girls, she's definitely a standout. But I don't know. I'm just assuming maybe that little stint definitely hurt her. Now, what was really nice about this show was that they allowed the top 16 to take the ramp for both evening gown and swimsuit. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about swimsuit first. So the ladies took to the ramp. The special award for swimsuit went to Celeste Cortesi. We will now try to pronounce her name as it is. So yeah, it went to Celeste Cortesi. But let me tell you that when we were watching the show for swimsuit, I think all of the crowd, or at least I've been listening to the crowd, all of them were definitely rooting for Miss Baguio. And if it were just the proportions and the body, I would have given that award to Chantal Schmidt. I thought that she had the best body in the bunch. I thought that she was the sexiest. And this is sexy that appeals to both men and women. If it was about performance, I felt that the award should have been given to Miss Baguio. She commanded the crowd during swimsuit. But if it had something to do with overall performance and impact, there was no doubt that it was an award for Celeste Cortesi. So did I feel like they made the right choice? I'm pretty sure that they made the right choice, but my personal pick for that segment would have been Miss Baguio. Did I like the swimsuits? I did. I was just a little distracted with the floral appliques that were pinned on the bikini tops of the ladies. I thought it was just a little distracting. The look was very directional. They had this jean jacket, varsity jacket going on. They had the tropical thing going on. So yeah, I thought that it had a clear concept. I just preferred the swimsuits from the preliminary show. So moving on to the gown part. So they went a little dramatic with the gown part. It was nice to have all of the ladies change into their gowns, even the ones who didn't make it. I wish I could give a little more time to really dissect all the other looks that did not make it, because I found really, really promising gown looks for you. But for the gowns, I'm not going to give you a lengthy explanation on the gowns because there will be a separate episode for this. But I will say that although Michelle D won the best in gown category, we all felt, at least from the row that I was sitting at, we all felt that the most beautiful gown from that segment belonged to Katrina Legado. It was just beautifully draped. It was in an unusual color, and it was just really regal in the way that she carried it and the way that she was styled that evening. I thought that it was really, really exquisite. Celeste Cortesi, of course, the eventual winner, went for something that was really sparkly, and I'm gonna give you just a little bit of a something before I do my gown episode. I was talking to a friend of mine from high school who is based in Italy, and she said that the name Cortesi actually means color, and the name Celeste means sky blue. So it actually makes sense for Celeste Cortesi to wear a little bit of silver and a little bit of blue in the gown. So yeah, if that was intentional, that was really, really nice. Let me give you other of highlights of the show as well. I thought that Bea coming out in a tuxedo was really a moment. I mean, if you were at the venue, it was really emotional to see her that way. It was definitely a Rio Mori experience. She was in a brocade suit by Frances Libiran, and I thought that it was a good way to just really showcase her androgynous side and, gender fluid side, or whatever it is. That she's been fighting for. It was a really good nod to the cause that has been attached to her. I just wish that the make registered nicely on screen, because when I saw it on TV, it looked like it needed more ironing. Like there were so many creased parts, so I felt like it could have been a lot more crisp in the way that it was presented on stage. But the emotions were like so raw. The emotions was just like so high with Bea, and she was trying to really hold back her tears, and it was a really good moment. There were so many parts of the show that paid tribute to Bea, and rightly so, because this is a very young organization, and to bring someone to top 5, that's really something. So I like that they gave Bea what was due to her. And so another highlight for me was definitely that little introduction with, or that little video that showcased Kat. And I remember being so confused because they dimmed the lights and we were trying to figure out who was going to come out. And the last part, when there were so many other ladies that came out with Iris and Demi and Pia looking super duper hot came out. I was a little confused with who was going to go forward. I thought it was Catriona Gray until I remembered, yeah, she's actually in Bohol and she wouldn't be able to make it. But it was actually Harnaz who went forward. So just seeing these queens was definitely a feat. And I would really have to thank you guys for pushing me to attend because I'm very shallow as a person. I mean, I like beauty. I like the appreciation of physical beauty. And I thought that it was just a really nice gesture to have all of these ladies on the same stage as the contestants and just have that amount of beauty concentrated in one area. I was really very satisfied just looking at these beautiful faces. It's just delight for me. But then again, that's just me. So yeah, it was really good. It was a powerful moment to have all these powerful women on stage. So yeah, definitely kudos to that. Now they move into cutting to top 10. And when they cut to top 10, the ones who made it were actually the strongest speakers in the bunch. So we had Makati, we had Pasay, we had Baguio, we had Taguig, Misamis Oriental, Cebu Province, Bohol, Cebu City, Albay, and Iloilo Province. So looking at the roster, I mean, if you set the scores back to zero, this is definitely anybody's ball game if Q&A and comm skills are to be considered. So the first thing they did was they tried to do a getting to know you part with Pia. And I think that this gave us a glimpse of how they could perform during Q&A. So some of them went a little lighter, some of them, yeah, brought in their A game when talking about their sob stories. And let me just tell you, without um, giving you specifics, I thought that some of the narrative, especially some of the sadder narratives, just became a little gas-gas. And I say this because you know how it is when you're sitting in a crowd and you kind of know what their reaction means, like whenever they would collectively groan or they would collectively laugh or that they would collectively have knowing smiles. It seems like they're onto something and it seems like they're cringing deep inside. So that's how I felt. Those who went a little dramatic and those who went a little dramatic over and over with their narrative, it just sort of lost their sheen. Although they delivered their uh, thoughts in a flawless manner because they could speak English really, really well. I think that some of the narrative side was just a little bit on the cringy side as well. They cut to top five and had the top five go into the interview portion. I think that there were some people who definitely scratched their heads because of the non-inclusion of several other ladies. Now, for top five, the ones who got in were Misamis Oriental, Makati, Taguig, Pasay, and Bohol. And of course, people went nuts that Julia was left out of this, Baguio was left out of this as well, and of course, Chantal was left out of this. So they were just saying that, you know, with the likes of Chantal and Julia, maybe they did not want anyone who is really, really good with their comm skills to advance because this would diminish the chances of the winner they had in mind. But again, guys, these are purely speculative. Now, moving on to top five because we can't do anything about the non-inclusion of Chantal, Lou Pixon even, Julia, even Genesis Latugat. We can't do anything about that anymore. So let's focus on top five this time. And I think that these top five were really strong ladies on their own. Now let me address the inclusion of Taguig because I know and I've read and I've spoken to a lot of you. Not a lot of you were really happy with Taguig, especially because she kept on with the narrative of having an 8-year boyfriend and climbing 8 mountaintops. So I agree with you. I think that this was cute the first time. I agree that dragging the narrative up until Q&A was just a little too much, and it did not help Katrina's image. A lot of people are really banking on Katrina because of her looks and her pageant training, but not so much with her comm skills and her depth. And having this narrative spin along for the whole duration of the show just proved that she wasn't ready in that department. But I will also agree with Catriona Gray. She tweeted that these ladies were given very easy questions. And I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that they were given easy questions. And I think that number one, it has something to do with the upcoming elections. Maybe they didn't want to be too political because it's going to be even more heated. And number two, I just noticed even from the interview challenges and the Q&A preliminaries that the ladies are always so prepared when you give them difficult questions. They can answer difficult questions. But I think the reason why the ladies were given easier questions is because they have a tendency to buckle when they're answering easier questions. And very early on, from the top five questions, Bohol at one point held the ball. I think that she delivered a really solid answer. I felt that probably one of the reasons why she did not advance any further was because from her answer, it seemed like she was chastising the people who said things about her weight, said things about her body, without realizing that this is a competition. People will say anything because people will push you to be at your best. As for Taguig making it, even if she doesn't sound as confident or as deep as the others, you have to understand, guys, that there were other segments of the competition that she aced. She definitely has been acing the fashion side, the pasarela side, the posing side, the personality side. So this is what I've been saying, guys. If there is a checklist and you're not really good at one of the aspects, then you might as well score points at the other aspects of being a beauty queen. And I think that this was exactly what happened to Katrina Liagado. There were so many aspects of the competition that she scored really high at, that even if you pull down her score from her Q&A performance or how she has been performing, at least on the speaking side, it's still going to balance things out, and it's still going to be enough for her to be included, because Katrina is still rather bankable as both a beauty queen, an endorser, and a personality. So let's pretty much leave it at that. Now let's talk about Celeste Cortezi. First of all, this is a historic moment for Celeste. We have had a successful crossover in the past with Catriona Gray moving from Miss World Philippines to Binibining Pilipinas. So this is the second time that it happened. When Celeste Cortezi first submitted her application, we were blown away. We were blown away by her maturity and how far she came along from her stint in 2018. In 2018, she was just a teenager, I think. She didn't have control of her emotions, and I know that this will surface because our neighbors, our Indonesian neighbors, our Thai neighbors have already started digging up. There have been materials of Celeste back in the day being a bit feisty, doing unqueenly things, and because the Filipinos are, fond of giving second chances and fond of giving recognition to those who would better themselves, I think that Celeste Cortezi has gone a long way. And like what I've been saying for the longest time, she hasn't been out there to impress us or wow us. She's there to charm us, and she has been very charming since the start of the competition. Every time she would go out, the people would go wild. And let me tell you, this is a pretty tame crowd. This crowd is not as wild as the crowd at Binibining Pilipinas, so there's that element of being well behaved and proper. But whenever Celeste Cortezi would take to the stage, people would go nuts. They would go absolutely crazy. So that in itself is really an indicator. Number two, when I went around, because there would be breaks in between, I would have my toilet break or maybe get a drink, and I would bump into some beauty queens, a personality, someone from behind the scenes, a designer, an accessories designer. So I would bump into these personalities, and some of them I took some videos of, some of them I totally forgot to turn on my phone, but would speak to them and I would ask them who they were rooting for. This was while the show was still ongoing, and we would be on a break, and they would always say Pasay. I think that almost all, if not all, of the folks that I spoke with picked her. So you could really see that, there at the venue, they really had a strong feeling for Celeste Cortezi. It didn't matter that she wasn't as flawless when it came to delivery. I think that people nowadays really value authenticity. They value being perfectly imperfect. They value sincerity. And Celeste talking about family, on how it's similar with Italians and Filipinos, talking about her mother, cracking her voice as she was talking about her mother. This definitely resonated with the crowd. I mean, I'm usually not someone who displays the feels, but I definitely got into that because I also have a mother who has been living in Japan for the longest time, and I haven't seen her since 2013. So I feel this. I mean, I definitely understand where she was coming from, and it hit a string. So with her winning, I thought that she was really collected. She wasn't calm. You could see that, frantic energy bubbling. It was definitely there, but I think the crowd appreciated being real, being shaky, being a little nervous and not being too sure of herself. But more than anything else, I think that Celeste Cortesi was prepared. She was directional. She knew what she was doing. She knew how it was to change from one camp to another, and she knew what she needed from this other camp, and she knew that this entailed work, that it wasn't going to work just because she has a beautiful face and just because she has a proportioned body. She has to have all of the checklist done before she gets into the final stage of the competition. But yeah, I guess more than anything else, she had the glow, and this is what we call in pageantry as a winner's glow. And while all the others had a little bit of styling issues here and there, maybe some makeup and hair issues, she was just flawless. She was perfect that evening. That evening definitely belonged to her. And I'm really very happy that she won because this would quell down rumors and talks about Miss Universe Philippines organization being aces and queens centric. For years, there have been talks that you're not going to go and advance if you're from a different camp, especially if you have a little bit of that KF thing going on. Because as we all know, Celeste Cortez, he was originally from KF. So I'm glad that it was all shattered, that we could all start and get ourselves like a clean slate and just wish Miss Universe Philippines well and give them the credit that's due for them. They did a really good job in staging this. It was really glossy, and kudos to them for pulling in the sponsors and elevating the brand. I mean, ultimately, when we push the organization to their limit, this is really to elevate themselves because they took themselves out of Binibining Pilipinas anyway. And the expectation is for them to lift up Miss Universe Philippines because Miss Universe Philippines has always had a home at Binibining Pilipinas. So for them to do that, expectations will definitely be higher. And for this, I think that they've proven why it was necessary to pull Miss Universe Philippines and make it stand on its own. So on this note, I think this is a huge pass. I am so happy for Miss Universe Philippines for staging this successfully. I am so grateful for you guys in bringing me there because I understand my position in this community. I have a voice, and it's not a voice that is just all about negativity. This is about giving credit where credit is due. I want to thank you guys because you brought me there and I had a blast. I absolutely had such a fun time. It was frantic, it was exhausting, but I definitely enjoyed seeing my followers there. I enjoyed dressing up. I enjoyed spending this with the friends that I watched this with. I enjoyed the whole process of coordinating with Tita B as well, and just making the fans really happy by sending them a little bit of clues here and there, and figuring out puzzle pieces whenever we would post something at Tita's Pageantry. I definitely enjoyed this edition. There were some things that they might want to improve on, like maybe blocking and pacing, and maybe just giving the girls the time for their own, because I felt that at least with the runway parts, sometimes it's a little difficult when you're trying to do your thing on the runway and then you have a super popular girl at your back and they're all screaming the girl at the back. I mean, it kind of makes you lose your focus a little bit. So maybe just a little bit of tweaks in the future, but overall this was definitely a pass and I had a blast. So thank you so much, guys. This is a pretty lengthy review, but as I promised, I will make everything for you. So I hope you had fun and I hope you enjoy the ride. Please wait for my next episode. It's going to be sparkly and blingy just for you. Thank you so much, and goodbye, you guys.